So just as sort of God becomes incarnate in the person of Jesus Christ, I think that in every generation and in different cultural contexts, evil incarnates in different ways as well. So in our current context in the United States, one of the main ways that we see evil incarnate is the demon of white supremacy, right? In our culture, we don't necessarily see or understand, in white culture in particular, we don't really like see or understand sort of like demons flying around in the kind of like, I don't know, cartoon devil kind of way.
Right.
We think we're, so far evolved past that, although there are plenty of cultures who understand and see demons in ways that we don't always see them. In our culture, the way that demons are present is through white supremacy, through systems and institutions that are possessed, and that are webs that are so intricate that it is impossible to move through the world without sort of like becoming entangled in them. And yet that's our call, right? That's why we have God. We know who has already won. We know that our collective liberation will come. And so even though we're trapped by this sin of white supremacy and we can't free ourselves, we know that God has already won and will liberate all of us. And then the joy is that we are freed to work alongside God to free our neighbor.
Amen. Yeah, when we read The Cross and the Lynching Tree in one of my first theology classes at Lancaster Theological Seminary. And when I started going to church again after a very long absence, I heard the very gay pastor say that Jesus was executed as an enemy of the Roman state. And that was a phrase that I had never heard in all of the years that I'd been, in evangelical white Christian spaces. And you talk about this in the book, how that reframing, the Romans were the cops.
Right.
The religious elites were the collaborators. Jesus was lynched on a piece of wood that was used as state-sponsored terrorism by the empire. And we still see these kinds of things happening with the all too frequent, always tragic killings by racist cops and of Black Americans, of indigenous, of, Latinx, anybody that's not white, basically, but predominantly Black Americans. And white supremacy as a concept makes no sense to me. It just doesn't, it's just so monumentally stupid on its face.
Right.
Like there's nothing special about me because my DNA is 97% from the UK. It's just interesting if you're into that kind of interesting fact, but it doesn't make me special, not even a little bit.
Right. Right. And I think that's part of the reason why, Michelle Alexander talks about like the new Jim Crow, right? I think it's like we've gotten to a point as a society, many of us have gotten to a point as a society, I won't say everyone, because there's definitely still explicit, obvious racism all around us, and it's getting louder and louder and louder and more uncovered. So I don't want to at all downplay that. But Michelle Alexander and other people have talked about how the way that racism now functions is sort of to like become invisible, sort of like racism without racists, right? That kind of thing. And I think part of the reason for that is because it is like a ridiculous idea. It is a ridiculous idea that race, which is a construct, sort of can make someone better than another. And so even though it's this like fake thing that still sort of like makes all these rules about society, it's like it has to in some ways function on a level that is invisible or erased or subtle, because it's not an internally consistent argument, especially for those people who are Christians and people of faith, or just people of goodwill. But of course, as we know, Christians have been some of the worst perpetrators of racialized violence. And then on the flip side, of course, there have been Christians who have been very brave abolitionists, and particularly the religious and faith convictions of enslaved people who rose up, right? So it's like, yeah, it's such a good reminder to me it's a little bit easier to notice it in history, right? Because again, we sort of become we sort of stop noticing the things that are around. The water that we're swimming in just becomes normal to us.